Good morning. Well, nary a day passes when we hear one person or the other not blaming the other sex for harassment, for assault, for demeaning the person. I'm referring to the widespread outrage which is happening in USA nowadays. A reference to Harvey Weinstein. Earlier it was Cosby, Clinton, and Trump have also been victims, rightly or wrongly. But what's amazing is that when 31 leading ladies of Hollywood, the darlings of the masses, come and allege that they have been molested and raped, and the charge comes not for something that happened yesterday, a day before, something that happened 20 years back, 30 years back, 40 years back. For example, when Jane Fonda says that she was raped when she was 15, that's more than 40 years back, and she kept quiet. Why? Was it at that time that she was anxious to get a role? She, when I say she, I refer to all the people in that clan who have been allegedly victims of the casting couch. So why is it that they kept quiet for all that time? The argument often given is that they kept quiet because they did not want to be singled out, A. They were afraid of the public shame, B. And C. They wanted the jobs. So far, so good. But once they were established as actors, once they had their own name and their prestige to reckon with, when the people would have believed, at least they could have come out at that time. Why is it that a young girl, when she doesn't go to the police within 24 to 72 hours of being raped, it is alleged that it's an afterthought? But when these casting couch victims, within quotes, come up and allege molestation that happened half a century back, there is an uproar. Why? I'm definitely against sexual exploitation of women. I definitely say that the women need to be accorded the respect, the dignity, and their person must be respected. Nobody in the world has to violate the body and the spirit of the other person, and rape or sexual assault is nothing but an assault on the personality and on the psyche of the person. But this plethora of rage coming after half a century does raise some questions. As I said earlier, if they were victims and they were participants willingly in that victimhood, then they are not really victims. Then it was a consensual sex, or it was a shameful variation of prostitution. After all, what's wrong with the prostitution? The prostitutes sell their body and get money. These women sold their body and got the jobs. And the jobs that were not in hundreds of dollars, but in millions of dollars. They became the darling of the masses. The rewards were there, and they got the rewards. So if they were willing prostituting themselves, then why blame the men? I agree the men were guilty of exploiting the situation. But The research has shown that in more cases than not, the women throw themselves at the men in power and at wealthy men. Not all, but some. And all the women have not been guilty of casting couch syndrome. The aura of power is too strong for women to resist, and then they want to enjoy the glory, the reflected glory. And that is why people like Clinton can make use of their power to prey on women. And young women have a pleasure of being the consorts of the most powerful men. The same is about wealth. There is a curious attraction in power, whether the power be of the state, the power be of the money, or power of the giving the jobs, the CEOs. But there is always that aura, and women, some of them, are attracted towards that aura. And this gives an opportunity to the men to exploit them. I'm not condoning this exploitation, but I'm saying if the women were a bit more reserved, this would not happen. I don't appreciate the remark the judge in British Columbia made that the girl should not have opened her legs and she would not have been raped. Because she opened her legs, she was agreeing to have sex. I'm not going that far. But when a girl throws herself at a man, whether for a job or whether just for the sake of saying that he or she has been close to him, to the powerful, then to blame that person alone, and mark you, I'm saying alone, is not appropriate. Both are guilty. And then what's the result? We want gender parity. And in gender parity, we have seen that some women have been guilty of exploiting men as well. I've read a number of reports where women bosses have used subordinate men to satisfy their carnal desires. And this recrimination, this espousal, whether in the case of Cosby, of Harvey, or Trump, or Clinton, is symptomatic of the greed, the avarice. We know power corrupts, but no corruption can take place if case the other party is not willing. We always say it's a crime to accept bribe and crime to give bribe. So if a woman has been raped forcibly, then the man is guilty. But if the woman has been victim of casting couch, then the man is guilty, and so is the woman for leading him on. She has consented at that time. And when she has sufficient power and pelf, then she comes back and blames the man. And what's happening today? In Silicon Valley, many men have declined to have one-to-one meeting with women, or have rescheduled them from restaurants to conference rooms where somebody else is present. On the Wall Street, many men have refused behind closed doors. They want the open doors so that men and women passing by can peer in. So the sanctity of closed door meeting is over. There have been cases when very scrupulously minded people are very careful in which words they use. to be politically correct. You know, this fear psychosis that overtaking the word and the women part of the word in particular is not a happy sign. When men are afraid to meet women to discuss something important, fearing that this closed door meeting might be taken and might be interpreted by others or misused by the person with whom they are talking later on, after half a century even, the sense of initiative and the drive would be missing. The human contact would have lost its charm. Sometimes it feels that we have never been civilized. We had a veneer of civilization, and the animal instincts take over as soon as an opportunity is there in the case of men, and also in the case of women. Men have always been the animals on the prowl, and women have, most of them, if not all of them, have always been victims of their own desire to attract the male, especially the male in power and especially the wealthy male. This is a human condition, and this human condition cannot be attributed only to the animal instinct of man. As for the animal instincts are concerned, they are both in the man and the women. The only thing is, women is more vulnerable. But once the more vulnerable section of society crosses a limit or sends an invite, then she is guilty as well. The fear psychosis that's taking up in the word, in the male word, has repercussions. Many times I feel that why is it that men and women, when they meet in public and they embrace cheek to cheek, nobody minds if there are half a dozen people standing there, and it's common social way of relationship. And the same men and women, if they are met a dozen times in the public and they go and meet in the office privately and just embrace, touch cheek to cheek, innocently, because they have been habituated to do so, why this hullabaloo? And especially the same women, after half a century, start saying, well, look here, I have been touched inappropriately. What is appropriate in the ballroom, what is appropriate at the conference, becomes inappropriate behind closed doors, although no sexual innuendo has been exchanged. I remember a joke at one time, and the joke goes that women were talking among themselves. And then when women asked, well, what do men do when they talk among themselves? And the other women replied, well, they talk the way we talk. And the third woman said, oh, so shameful. So they can talk the locker talk. But the moment men do so, that becomes shameful. This is a matter of perception. I'm very clear that sexual exploitation is something detestable and hateful. But making the claim of sexual exploitation after the passage of a decade or half a century is a clear sign of afterthought. inclination to indulge in witch hunt. There have been cases where women have said that they have been exploited, inappropriately touched, winked at by a man. After some time, after the purpose for which she met him has been fulfilled. This afterthought is something detestable. I am no apologist for Harvey or Bill Cosby. They did misuse their positions, but the opportunity to do so was provided by these women, first by agreeing to sleep with them, then for keeping quiet for half a century, 20 years and 30 years. This raises questions about their veracity, about their credibility. While Harvey should be punished, these women need to be punished as well. Otherwise, what would happen? This sexual exploitation would be used as a weapon of witch hunt to punish men whom you don't like, out of sheer animosity, or out of the desire just to come in the public eye. You would start blaming, and then that tears apart the social fabric. No complaint of sexual exploitation should be taken lightly, but no misguided complaint should also be taken lightly. Let's ensure that the sexual exploitation of women is not permitted, nor is the blackmailing and the witch hunt permitted. Therein lies the safety of the mankind and a proper relationship between the male and the female. Thank you.